Hey guys and girls, welcome to this week's episode of the B.Invested Birchy podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Birch. This is the show unraveling the truth to the facade of the 21st century, where they're exiting the matrix and waking up to motherfucking reality. We are on another wave of, is it Corona? Is it what? What is it a wave of? We're on a new wave about to start of growth in this country on a property front. And why would that be? Has it got anything to do with the fact that the government has introduced the 5% deposit scheme for the first home buyers? Let's touch on that for a moment, but that is not a part of the wave that I'm going to be talking about, right? So if you haven't heard, the Australian government is now introducing a first homeowner grant for everybody. There's been homeowner grants in all different shapes and sizes over the last 20 odd years to pump up the housing Ponzi bubble, right? And they just keep getting more luxurious and throwing in more things to make it happen and to survive and to keep growing and inflating. So 20 years ago, we saw first homeowner grant come out, $7,000 to buy a house. And you got $14,000 to buy a house. And we started seeing new build bonuses, and we started seeing stamp duty rebates. And as the house prices go up, stamp duty on $1 million house is 20, 30 grand. But of recent times, they've changed it. They've put in criteria. So they said, if you're a first home buyer, we'll allow you to get 5% deposit, no mortgage insurance. Because when you buy a property for, say, $1 million, you have to put in 20% deposit, so 200 grand. And if you want to go use mortgage insurance, you have to pay like 10 grand for the benefit of putting only down a $50,000 deposit. But the government came in and they said, well, no stamp duty. And if you're a first home buyer, no mortgage insurance. So you technically got the government to back you to get a $50,000 deposit to buy a $1 million property. And that's opened up the gates for a lot of people. So the government put on their measures about you can only have you have to earn under 150,000, whatever the parameters were, for you to be able to be eligible for the first home in a grant scheme. But the problem is the house prices have gone up too high. The income for those people don't allow for that to happen. So the government now, recently, as of October, that launched last week, said that you can have this scheme, but it's uncapped. Anyone can have it. There's a first home buyer. So you could be on $1 million a year. The property could be $5 million, whatever, that is uncapped. So that opens the floodgate to more people coming into the market. And everyone's talking about this new wave of people coming into the market that will be, using this 5% first home in a grant, whatever. I want to talk to you about a new wave that we haven't even touched on, the government hasn't touched on, media hasn't touched on. Probably even those rioters the other week that came out to protest, right, about migration haven't even touched on. And it's a tremendous one, right? We are currently witnessing 1,500 people a day come into the country, right? It's over 500,000 people a year. Right? And put into context, we've got Tasmania, say Hobart, say Darwin, say Townsville. Those three locations, could be the whole Gold Coast, for example, right, are coming in every year, but there's nowhere for them to go. So they're renting properties and it's pushing the rents up, which is fantastic, right? But the problem is when someone is migrating to the country, they don't go, okay, cool, I've arrived in Australia, let's go buy all the houses up, right? They're like, shit, we need to get a rental, we can't, like if you're not a permanent resident, you can't go and buy a property. There's Foreign Investment Review Board, which will tell that you can only buy a certain type of property, which is a brand new one. So people are migrating here. So we've had 500,000 this year, 500,000 last year, 500,000 the year before, whatever it was a few years before that, right? But as these, like I think about 1,500 people, right? If a plane is like 150, 200, 300 people, they can't buy. But we're getting to a point now where their permanent residencies are coming through, their citizenships are coming through. So the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, right, are going to be very crucial as we start seeing the new migrants that are coming to the country being able to buy a property, right? And we have not even witnessed that. I don't believe it's been calculated into any of the stats, numbers, or figures that are out there. So we've got the pressure on the system that we already have, right? But now let's think about the amount of buyers that are going to be coming into the marketplace. So we've got the first home in a grant, which will bring a whole wave of new buyers, right? I'm excited to see what will happen because all the property prices go. It's annoying because all the stuff that I buy is the cheap shit, and that's where everyone can afford to buy is in the cheap shit. So that blows up first. It's not the 2 million, 4 million, 5 million properties that are going up in value. It's the cheaper stuff that are under 500 grand, under $1 million that are going up. So we've got first homeowners, which are now able to do that by getting the market 5%, right? So instead of needing 200, 250K, you only need 50 grand, 30 grand, 20 grand, 15 grand, 10 grand to buy a property. Just think about this. A $250,000 property at a 5%, that's 12.5 grand that you need to get into one of those properties. Just go live in a regional area for the next 6 months. You've got yourself a property for 12.5 grand, right? Sell your car, get a credit card, whatever it may be. I'm not saying to go do that, but like people would be out there doing that to get into a property that could never get into a property beforehand. So that's got a whole new market there. But then when someone's arriving in the country, 500,000 people coming in, let's say 200,000, 300,000 of them get residency, get citizenship, whatnot per year. These guys are first home buyers in the country. So now they're able to get in the market with a very small amount, right? And we're pushing more supply into that first home buyer market. And then we're combining with such high numbers, that's going to create a whole mother of booms. And I'm excited to see that. So I guess looking at that next property boom, the new wave, right? What should we expect to see over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years as migration continues to increase and the new migrants are looking to buy, settle down, and get property here? What corridors would they be looking at? I'd assume, right, smart ones are out there buying in markets which are going to give them good returns and be investors. But the most likely part is that they're going to be buying the properties that they're renting at the moment so they don't have to rent. So, what regions would be migrant friendly, would be, is going to be popular as these things transition. So I look at those markets. We've started to see some areas. For example, I'm just going to use inner Sydney, like sort of west from the city, Canterbury, Bankstown sort of region, Lakemba, Punchbowl, that sort of area. If we go back 2016, 2018, that market peaked, right? Units over there topped out, went crazy. The market started tapering off in about 2018, 19. And then when Corona came, there was no people buying in there because there was a lack of tenants. The rents dropped, the prices dropped, everywhere else was taking off. But that market got impacted due to the fact that there wasn't any migrants coming in and there was a very high, dense migrant population over there. It still is. But now we've seen a change in policy. There's been a lot of pressure put on that system. The rents are now $600 a week for a little crappy 2-bedroom unit, which was only renting for $250 in the middle of Corona, and being so close to the city. So are those people that are living in Bankstown going to say, okay, cool, I've got residency, I'm going to pack up now and I'm going to move to, I don't know, Newcastle? They could, you might lose a few, but communities are built, people move to locations, communities are built, people want to stay around there. So as we start seeing pressure in some, I'm not saying or suggesting that Bankstown area is going to boom, for example, but I was using that as one of thousands of locations across the country, which are very high demographic of people that were not born in Australia. So when I think about, the demand that's coming, right? Yeah, we can sit there and say the 5% deposit scheme is going to help push the market up. First home agreements are going to go through the roof. We've got to look at the migration factor. We haven't seen the migrants that are coming in buy at any scale at this point, right? There's a few that can buy, but we've got to wait for processing, right? And I've seen a lot of people get their visas, become citizens, become residents, and it isn't just an overnight thing. This might take 2 years, it might take 5 years, it might take 7 years, it might take 10 years. It is a process I'm not familiar with because I was born here, right? But I've seen it firsthand and how long it can take. We've got masses, like we're at 200,000 population intake, now we're at 500,000 intake. When are they going to get the ability to buy a property? That is the boom that's going to take us, 20, let's say this first home agreement takes us from 25, 26, 27, over the next 12, 24 months, we see a new boom. Sprinkle on there, interest rates dropping, fabulous. But what's the boom that's going to take us from 27, 28, 29, 30 is these new buyers that are entering the market that were not buyers beforehand. And that's without talking about more people coming to put more pressure on the existing system. It's fantastic. It's one of the most funnest things I ever would have calculated or factored in to my investing strategy 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. It would have been, oh, properties go up because this. It's going up because of, monetary policy, low interest rates, whatnot. But we cannot ignore, you're stupid to ignore the fact that this is going to be a major, major impact and a major driver and shift for your journey as being a property investor by accommodating people, right? And that's the whole game of you wanting to invest is to make the profit. So I look at the undersuppliers, the regions where these migrants are moving to. We did a podcast recently with Wayne from my investor relations team. And I remember when I was doing the podcast, he said his wife had come into the country from being overseas, and she was talking to someone that was on a plane and they'd never been to Australia beforehand. And they said, oh, we're going to go to Tamworth. And they go, well, are you going to drive there? And they go, no, we've just come from India. We're going to get off here. We're going to go to the domestic terminal, and then we're going to fly out to Tamworth. We've never been there, never stepped foot in there. I've got a job lined up. I'm going to be a nurse, right? I'm like, wow, right? That's, skilled labor going to regions. So what are the regions that you should be looking at, right? I'm not going to share that, right, on the video. That's our IP. That's what we research. That's where we go for the, looking at these trends and looking at where the migration is needed and where the pressure is being put into that system. But I can tell you, there is so many regions and regional towns and locations throughout this country which are experiencing big shifts and big pressures that they never ever would have seen happening 5 years, 10 years, 15 years ago. And that will change the demographics of our country, of our nation, of the infrastructure that's there in the decades to come. And that is exciting because, we're seeing rapid growth in some of these places where, they've got up, instead of going up 5% or 10% or 30% in a year, they're literally doubling, tripling, quadrupling because they've got such low barrier of entry, and the demand is so strong, which is outstripping it. So if we look at the data at the moment, it appears that we're short about 500,000 properties. Right? I remember back in, this is ABS statistics, going back in 2010, I was doing a presentation for about 200,000, and it was showing that it'd be at about 250,000 shortage of stock by about 2016, 2017. And the shortage of properties that we're seeing at the moment has got nothing in comparison to what it's going to be like in the future. And this is factual data, right? We can't build quick enough to keep up with demand. It's a great problem to be having. And, you can sit there and say, oh, this is not right, or whatever the case may be. It is what it is. You can be naive to it and be like, oh, I just can't do it. It's because of the boomers have got a house. Mum and dad have been in their house for 50 years. I've got to kick them out. I've got to charge a tax. We've got to remove negative gearing. It's the greedy investors over there. No, it's the system is fundamentally broken, is redundant. And you can sit there and whinge about it, or you can sit there and educate yourself and, see where the opportunities, look for the opportunities and being able to play a pivotal role in, the growth of our nation over the next decade or 2 decades by providing housing, whether it's building stuff. I'm not about building stuff, of course, right? I'm about buying and investing and providing affordable accommodation for people. But whether it is building or whatever it may be, good luck as if that's your investing strategy. But there's so much, opportunity that's out there, and I don't think anyone's factoring in the wave that's going to come, right? That this wave is here. It just hasn't landed as far as into the property space and into that market to see these prices and regions that take off yet. So, I guess on that front, if you're a first homeowner and you're wanting to get in the market, I'd get in sooner rather than later. If you're an investor and you're investing, I'd do it sooner rather than later. I always find it humorous when I see people go, oh, I'll get 10 properties. I'll buy one property a year for the next 10 years. Well, on year 10, if the properties are doubling, you're going to be paying double for the asset in 10 years than what you would today, right? If you're adding extra pressures into the market, you'll be paying a lot more for the asset. So collect, accumulate, and get that portfolio built as quick as possible, so then you can be sitting there ready. This is why I'm the happiest dude out in the world, because I'm just like, I've spent 2 decades building out this portfolio, and all these changes that are happening in the market, every time I see, I'm like, push the migration to, 1 million people a year coming through. It's going to be great. It's going to push more pressure into the system. People sit there and go be like, oh, Birchy, that's so terrible. Why would you say push these? We've already got a problem. Well, it's a problem if you haven't got yourself ready, if you haven't got yourself prepared, and you're not in a position to be able to capitalize from it. But for me, maybe it's my mindset. Maybe I'm thinking like these greedy elites and, all that. But I've been able to put myself in that position to be able to build out the portfolio to capitalize on what's coming. So get yourself ready, take advantage of it. You can sit there and whinge. I can sit here and whinge and say, oh, the roads are too busy. The infrastructure can't keep up. My life used to be better 5-10 years ago without, having so many people on the roads and the shopping centers and more chaos out there. Or I can be like, shit, keep making it happen, because this is, awesome for everyone. So if you need help on building out a strategy, whether you need help on getting started with your first property, I guess if you have the ability to get into a property for 5% of 200 grand is 10 grand, 5% of 400 grand is 20 grand. The barrier of entry is becoming much more attainable for people to be able to get into the market. If you want a strategy on that front, unsure, I can't go and buy the dream house today. That's what we're all about, is building strategy. I reckon half of my investors that I sit here and talk about with the 10, 20, 30 properties in their portfolio have either come to me as a tenant and renting a property, or they are still a tenant in the property. I find it funny, right? All these people, blue-haired, pink-haired people on the ABC complaining, saying this, that, the next thing, it's negative gearing, it's whatever, it's the greedy investors. I reckon half of the people that come to me are providing the rental accommodation for the blue hair, pink hair socialists to be able to sit there and whinge about how they're hard done by from investors. They're tenants themselves. So if you want help on building your strategy to get out of the system and to be able to take advantage of it, hit us up 1300-367-925, admin@binvested.com.au. Smash up the like, share it around, and subscribe, because we're out every Thursday on Google Play, Apple Play, Spotify, and YouTube. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
People out saying, man, we're stuck in the matrix. This my advice, don't care if you take it. The dollar back to die, soon to be hyperinflated.